Welcome. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for showing up to my webinar. Super excited to be here. Thank you, Richard, for the introduction. Thank you, Aman Gierbach, for hosting me. I've come with my hat today. Can't get them anymore. They're all out, unfortunately. Hey, so you know what's super exciting to me? I know that there's people watching this webinar that have seen this probably 3 or 4 times already. It's like, I don't know, people can't get enough of dental photography, which is super exciting to me. What's really exciting to me too is that during this whole pandemic, during all of the craziness, people are still showing up. People are getting up early, staying up late, whatever it is, to come out and check out the information that's being put out there. So many companies are doing this for free. So many folks, a lot of my good friends are doing this at no charge, for nothing, which gives me a lot of renewed faith in the specialty and in this great profession of ours. Again, if it's not obvious, if you haven't seen me lecture before, if you haven't seen this webinar before, you'll figure out by the time this is all said and done, I'm really, really psyched about this topic. I'm really psyched about dentistry. Please, please, please feel free to email me, get in touch with me, send me your questions, comments, like whatever. Next time you're going to be in Maine, so we can have a beer, or whatever it is, connect with me. I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see more of. Just get in touch with me. Send me your photos. I'd love to, see what you guys are up to, see what you guys are doing. So many of you that know me, you know that I speak for Aman Gierbach. I'm sort of on the fence a little bit though, because even though I'm a laboratory technician, I'm also a board certified prosthodontist. And every time I lecture, I talk about implants, I talk about tooth preparation, I talk about immediate dentures, I talk about a lot of stuff. You know what people always ask me though? They never ask me, hey Miles, what implant system do you use? Or what burrs are you using? What acrylic did you use for that? The first thing they always ask is, hey man, how'd you get those photos? How do I take better photos? And if they're laboratory technicians, they say, hey man, if I wanted to get your business, Miles, what would I have to do to get you to become one of my clients? And if it's a prosthodontist like me, they say, Miles, how do I attract better patients? How do I get the general dentist to refer to me? And if it's like, some of these comprehensive dentists, some of the general dentists, they're like, hey man, yeah, how do I get better patients in? How do I do this? So this presentation is going to show you guys simply that photography is really it's your ticket to play, all right? And you need photography like you need to do endo or oral surgery or crown lengthening or, veneer preps. It's just another tool. And a lot of people really neglect that fact. And I think the reason why is, number one, we're not really taught photography in dental school. I learned it a little bit in residency, but we did photography because we had to. It wasn't something that really we enjoyed doing, right? It was like mounting our casts and things like that. It was just another task, right? What I soon figured out though is that you can use photography to really brand yourself, right? And you can use this as a marketing strategy. And it doesn't matter if you're a specialist like me, it doesn't matter if you're a general dentist, it doesn't matter if you're a laboratory technician. Every single person out there can use photography, and it's really simple and it's really easy and it doesn't cost that much. All right, so I'm going to show you a few steps here. This presentation is going to be around about an hour or so. And I'm going to go over many things with you guys. So again, at the end of this, don't feel like you need to take notes. Shoot me an email afterwards, get in touch. I'll go back over a few things. So first thing you got to ask, there's 3 questions. Like, okay, so what kind of photos do you want to take? What's your motivation for these photos? People have different, there's a different impetus for everybody to take photography. And, my first thing that I mentioned to you guys that people say to me is, hey, I want to take better photos. What does better mean? Does better mean you want to be able to communicate in a more effective way with your laboratory? Do you want to take better photos so you can get more thumbs ups and fire emojis on Instagram? What does better mean to you? So when we go through this, I'm going to talk in general terms about 4 different types of dental photos. We're going to do intraoral photos, extraoral, benchtop, portrait. Intraoral tends to be the most common types of photos, and portraits tend to be, sort of on the other end, and we'll kind of go through that in a little bit. And for the 4 different types of photos, there's generally 4 uses for these photos, right? So what am I doing now? I'm lecturing to you guys, I'm talking to you guys, we're doing continuing education, right? That's a big one. What about peer review? Any of you guys out there that know that hopefully you spent some of this time getting some extra papers out? I know I did. Me and my buddies, my wife, we wrote a few extra papers during this time. What else are you gonna do, man? So you send those to peer review and you wanna present yourself in the best possible way. Collaboration. Now, again, as a specialist, I rely on many other specialists, right? I don't do my own implants. I don't do crown lengthening, right? So when I want to send a case to the periodontist, I need to send them really good, high quality photos so that they can take me seriously, so that they can help my patients in the best possible way, right? And then branding. So this is sort of the topic of this. Now, each one of these is in and of itself probably a 2-day course, right? But branding is a really big thing. And most people don't realize that, a lot of these dentists that are on Instagram now, right? They have some, I call it meaningless Mondays, where they'll post a photo of like some, or a Tuesday tip, right? Like, hey, you brush your teeth like twice a day and you won't get cavities. Like, no one cares, right? Nobody cares about Debbie's like 50th anniversary as like the front desk, patient care coordinator. Like, people don't care about that, right? If you brand yourself, now think about this, like patients have money in dollar amounts, like, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands if they're like, white collar, if they're doing better, right? Companies have budgets in billions, right? So maybe not, well, billions, maybe like, I don't know, euro, not euro, like pesos or something. I don't know. Hundreds of millions. Let's say hundreds of millions. Let's put it at hundreds of millions. Companies have much bigger budgets for you. If you can advertise and brand yourself, it's like, think about like Michael Jordan or LeBron James, right? So these professional athletes, or for my European colleagues, uh, I don't know who's a famous soccer player, Macy. I don't even know if I'm saying his name right, right? But these folks, where do they get their money? It's not from soccer, it's not from football, it's not from basketball, right? That's from like Nike and like these companies that are Gatorade that are giving them money to show off their stuff. So it's a much nicer way of doing things, and it helps me, it saves my back because I don't need to sit at the chair all the time. If you can do these things to brand yourself. Okay, so we talked about this before. So intraoral shade photos. All right, so these are the most common ones. It doesn't matter whether you're like just starting out, whether you're in dental school, whether you're a seasoned prosthodontist and you're about ready to retire in a few weeks. Intraoral photos are the very most common one. Now, for this presentation, for brevity, I can't go through finite details of each one. I'll give you a few tips and tricks. Extraoral photos are another really big one. These ones are very difficult to do. Most people are pretty decent at the intraoral because they have so much practice. Now, the extraoral photos, these are really great for your final shot. So this is an immediate denture, for example, from this guy. He's still a little bit numb, so he doesn't have that full Duchenne smile, right? But I'm doing these photos a lot for dentures because I really want to show the interplay of the acrylic, the lips, the epidermis, right? And so I don't use a standard camera setup for these. Actually, what I'm using is an owl bracket. Now, this is the owl bracket again. Maybe you guys are familiar with this. There's a lot of different brackets out there, right? And, it wouldn't be complete if they didn't have it in Almond Gearbach blue, right? They come in all these different sizes and shapes. You got them for Nikon, Canon. I use these all the time, right? And this is how I get my extraoral photos. And essentially, the twin flash of my camera is positioned on the outside and allows me to wrap that light around the patient's face a lot more. So here's my DSLR camera. This is the way that this looks. And it allows you a lot more creative freedom. But it also gives you the ability to, if you guys take a look here, and you can see in the image there, I don't know if you guys can see this right up close, but there's all these little like hashtags and markers so that I know that if I have like a 90-degree angle or 270-degree angle, and that gives me sort of the aesthetic that I want, well, I can jot that down and like make notes of that so that I have something that's predictable that I can constantly return to. All right. So this was a photo sent to me by my man, Smiles by Dammy. He's in the UK dentist, guys. There's his Instagram account. Check him out. He's really, really talented. And he asked me to, he was brave soul that stepped forward and asked me to critique his photos live for this course. So, Dammy, I don't know if you're watching, man, but I'm going to give a critique of this. I'll be kind. And to be honest, so this is the photo that he sent me. It's a real common photo, real classic photo, right? And the idea is that you're showing the patients, you're showing the dentition, you're showing the lips, you've got a little bit of perspective there, right? So you know what you're looking at, but there's some drama. And I actually really like this photo. If it was me, I'm really big into black and white. I would have liked to see this like a nice black and white photo, a nice rich photo. So conversations with my man here behind the scenes. So he used a couple soft boxes. And so if you take a look at the images here, you can see where that light source is coming in, right? And it creates almost like a headlight effect on that. And that's real common when you have these images and when you use soft boxes. And I know soft boxes are the most common things, but Dammy, I'm going to show you what I use for these types of photos. So I had my son stand in front of what I use. And so I'm not a big fan of soft boxes, right? The square soft boxes I don't really like. I prefer a big parabolic octabox, and I'll kind of go into that in a little bit. So again, this is my sort of version of this, right? There's still some drama there, but the Octabox has this ability to wrap light. And so here's my son, and one of the characteristics of him, he's got these kind of big ears that stick out, and I love this photo. So he's just standing directly in front of the Octabox, but notice how that light wraps around the face. That's just something that's very difficult to do with a softbox, all right? So for these types of images, I use an Octabox. And so again, the image of my son that's on, if you're viewing this webinar on your right, the profile view of him, again, this is a one light setup. It's not two. So that one single light has wrapped all the way around his face because this Octabox is so big. I mean, it's massive. It's 100 and, what is it, 120, no, centimeters. Yeah, centimeters. It's gigantic. I'll show you guys an image later on. But I really like this for a lot of reasons, and I'll tell you why. This was my man Rob Atwell. There's his Instagram handle, Wicked Bub. He's a Maine dentist. He came to my photo course, and this was a shot that he took at my photo course using just a twin flash. And so again, that's a much more simpler setup. Again, but this is some similar kind of thing. There's some drama there, some texture to the teeth. So that's an image like that. All right, photo type 3, benchtop photography. Guys, I think this is really, really critical. And so I know that there's some ceramists, there's some technicians watching this. And so for you guys, maybe getting that final photo, this is the equivalent of that. So if you're a restorative dentist, if you're a prosthodontist, and you're lecturing and you're publishing papers, I think this stuff is super critical to show context, right? It gives something for, and especially if you're showing stuff on your website, it gives your patients something to see from the before to the after. There's something in between. Think about if you wanted to buy a car, right? So you see like the raw materials on one side, right? Like the steel, the rubber, the leather, right? And you could see that in a pile and it doesn't mean anything. And then you see the Ferrari on the other end. But like how interested, how engaged would you be if you could see the process of that car being built, the handmade craftsmanship, right? The bespoke nature of the detail that goes into that. It's a much more compelling story. And so if you guys are trying to sell yourself to people, you need to include these photos in there, okay? And so again, it could be anything, just like setting teeth on the articulator. Now this is immediate denture that I did, all right? It could be any number of things. Fourth type of photo are the portraits. Portraits are the most difficult photos, but not really for the reasons that most people think. It's not because you need an elaborate studio setup. So this picture here was taken with just a simple camera and what I call a flash donut, okay? So I'll show this to you guys a little bit later on. That's a flash donut and just the camera. There's no elaborate studio setup, and I don't even have like a black backdrop. Like you guys see here on me now, there's like this like vinyl black backdrop that costs like 60 bucks. This patient is just standing in front of the wall, but because that light is hitting her face and it's so fast, it's not returning to the sensor in my camera, so it just provides like a black backdrop. And if you take a look at the eyes, do this, guys. Next time you're at the store, if you guys are even allowed to leave the house, if you guys aren't on complete lockdown, as we start to ease back into real life, right? Take a look at all the models in the photos. Like when you guys go to the grocery store, when you're at the mall, when you're at wherever you are, looking through a Vogue magazine, whatever, take a look at the eyes and look for the catch light. So in this image of this patient, this was Miss Maine 2018. This was my man Luke's and I are doing some veneers on her. But when you take a look at the eyes, look at the light in there, and that's a dead giveaway for the type of lighting setup that they're using. And that really has helped me a lot to see what really good professional portrait photographers are doing. And now let me just make a note here too, guys. Like I'm not a professional photographer. Like any dentist that markets themselves as a professional photographer, like, you know what I mean? Like they're not. Like, there's so much to photography. It'll take me the rest of my entire life, and I'll be like a decent photographer, maybe. Okay, so I just want to make that clear. Like I'm not a pro, and pretty much everything that I've learned and figured out, I've done like just through practice. All right. And so through that practice, I've learned that patients, when you get them into your office for the first time, they generally don't like to smile, right? Dentistry is painful. It's expensive. There's not a lot to grin about, okay? So this picture of Dan, this was taken right after we put his veneer in. So it's sometime between bonding that veneer and him going to check out and having my wife tell him what his balance due is. So he's still happy at this point. But and I'm kind of saying that in jest, but my point is, you really got to develop a rapport with your patients, okay? Don't start breaking out your camera. You get your cameras out and those soft boxes first day, people are going to be freaked out, right? They're going to be really intimidated by that. Do it at the end. You'll get patients that are super hammy and will do all kinds of things for you, right? And it's amazing that this is a great marketing strategy. When you take these photos, 9 times out of 10, that patient's going to tell you, this is the best photo. This is the best darn photo I have of myself. And it's funny to see that they use that as their Instagram avatars and their Facebook profile pictures later on. Like, they will love that. And imagine what kind of word of mouth that is when their friends and family say, wow, that's a great picture. And they're like, yeah, my dentist took that photo. Like, huh, if he's this, into his like portrait photos, man, how must he be with his teeth, right? And if you guys haven't noticed already, almost all my portraits are always done in black and white. Now, I did this in the beginning because I had no idea how to control the light. And so I made my images black and white to really hide the fact that I didn't know what I was doing, to kind of mask some of those effects. Now I just do it because I think it looks classier, right? And I love this quote by Dominic Rouse: color is everything, black and white is more. So just, that's my personal style. You guys all have to develop your own style. You can do whatever you want, look for inspiration, but that's just my thing. A lot of people will say, like, I don't like the black and white. I like the black and white. You don't have to do it. So here are some questions that I get, that I'm going to try to answer for you guys. So I realize that we live in a culture of, we want it now, we want it quick. You want social media, and you just want to swipe, look, view, swipe, and just repeat. And I understand that people aren't as into like the deep dive into seeing like what's really going on. And so the questions I always get is, people on Instagram, they have these silky photos, they've got these pure white backgrounds, and the metallic elements look so soft, and how do I get that? That's really what people want, right? So this was an image again of an immediate denture. This is the final result of that denture I showed you that I was setting in that previous photo. And again, this isn't in an elaborate photo studio. The black background you see is just a black piece of like t-shirt material. That's it. It's super flexible. I don't usually get these like big acrylic plates and all this kind of stuff. This isn't done in like a makeshift, like photo studio. That was just done with that big, what I call like the flash donut. It's this and a little speed light for, 30, 40 bucks that I got on Amazon. And that's how you get that image. You don't need really anything special. And again, this is an article that I wrote for JDT. If you guys want this article, I'm going to give you, again, like websites, links, everything at the end. Shoot me an email if you can't find it. I'll send you the PDF for this article that I wrote on emotive dental photography, which is what I'm talking about now. And the cover image, JDT, like, they saw this photo that I put on Instagram a while back, and they were like, hey, Miles, we like this picture. Would you mind writing us an article on how you did that? So cool, man. And so this is what I was saying about like the branding. I mean, you start putting your stuff out there, people will start to get in touch with you, and it's amazing. It becomes this massive snowball effect. So again, that same image, those pictures, those images that you see, those are just sitting on a mirror. And I took them that super glossy look that I just got that with that giant softbox there. So that's the way it looks up close. And this is, me sort of in action. I just have this big mirror, I don't know how many, maybe 30 centimeters. I'm not sure what that is. But it's this big mirror. I got it for like $8 at the grocery store, where they have like the women's hair care products. Like, I don't have to worry about that, obviously, fortunately. But, this is a mirror that I just bought. And I just keep that in my backpack when I'm walking around so I can do these types of photos, right? And so for anybody that's interested, this is actually what I use. I use this newer ring flash, and it was like $25. I think it might be maybe like $30 now. And then I use this speed light, and I actually don't use the Canon brand one. The Canon brand one, I'm a busted honest man. I'm broke. I can't afford it. It's so this one was like $61. I got it 4 years ago. It's been great. No complaints whatsoever. So another question you guys have to kind of consider, who's your target audience? You know what I mean? If you're a dental office and laboratory, are you just trying to communicate with each other? Or again, topic of this presentation, do you want to create a brand and you want to target dentists and patients, right? So the image on the left here is how I actually take my photos. And I think people are really surprised when they see this. They're like, oh, man, I can see the patient's lip, and there's saliva and a little bit of blood, and the flash looks really harsh. And I'm like, yeah, but that's how I actually take my photos. Like, if you think for a minute that I take shade photos like the pictures that you see on the right, bro, like, I do not have time for that, right? Dentistry is a for-profit business. Like, I need to make money. If I staged every photo like that for every patient during the day, I'd never get anything done. Also, let me make a point here. I see a lot of people taking shade photos like this, right? And then they wonder why the crowns come back and the value is off and the chroma doesn't look right. You can't use modifiers in your shade photos. Like, guaranteed it's going to be wrong. So if you are a dentist and you're viewing this, please take off the bouncers, take off the paper, take off whatever it is. Just take a very raw photo. It's not sexy, it's not pretty, but it's real. And that's what your ceramist, that's what your laboratory technician really needs to give you the best possible result. The images on the right, that's tooth porn, man. That's just for the internet, right? That's all that is. Like, You know, so when people are come to me and emailing me like, Miles, like my photos don't look like that. Dude, my photos don't look like that. Okay. So like this was like a morning, you know. So again, you see the denture photos on the right. You know, this is a picture I sent to, you know, one of the technicians I was working with, and I'm like, hey, good enough. That photo looks great. You can see the patient's mustache, you can see her chapped lips, the angular colitis that's forming, right? You can see everything. You see half of her breakfast in the back of her mouth, right? Like my shade photos do not look like the ones on the right. That is just for like a high five somewhere else with one of my buddies later on. And that is, I do that like once or twice a year. Like I cannot take photos like that. It doesn't make any sense to do that. So the other question is, how do I get the white photos, like that white, pure white background? All right, this is what we call like a high key background. Now, guys, like you see behind me, I've got these lights and stuff behind me, and in my other room, I've got all this cool stuff to do, really, really cool like product photos and stuff. But like what I really want to show you guys is just the inexpensive stuff that anybody, like the low hanging fruit, anybody can do. So this photo was taken just same with this. I'm going to show you a series of photographs, right? These are articulators. So Aman Gearbox made this articulator. It was like a custom, you know, limited edition black articulator, and it was sexy. It's a sexy looking articulator. Like I don't even use, I'm gonna be honest, I don't even use this articulator. It sits there in like a glass case in my lab so that gypsum and dust doesn't get on it. And then what I do is I've got their mounting articulator, right? I've got a couple other articulators that have been through, you know, the muck and back. And those are the ones that I use for like the mounting and the polishing and steaming, right? And then when everything's done, I just click it on that, and that's when I take my photos, right? So I always kind of have the final photo in mind. And the way that I did this, you know, again, it wasn't done in a studio. This is a photo of me. Oh, big surprise, I'm using that flash donut again, right? So, and you guys see that white piece of cloth there? That's just like again, like a little piece of like white t-shirt material. Like that's all that is. My wife got that for like $3 at the fabric store. I put the articulator on there. I get up close, and you know, I take that flash, and it pops back. And so the way that you see these photos, you know, there's a slight bit of tweaking, maybe with the exposure in Keynote or something like that. But that's it. And this was taken, you know, sometime between making dinner and like doing my kids' homework. I like cleared the table really quick, put my camera stuff there, and when it was done, I packed the articulator and that, you know, all my stuff back in the camera bag, which you see laying there. And that was it, man. And that's how I got those photos. It took me like 10 minutes. And so, you know, again, like people always, I always see these people with these big, like, you know, soft boxes and setups, elaborate setups. And I'm like, all right, yeah, but like, okay, what do you do if you go to like somebody else's office? Like when I go to the surgeon's office, like I said, I don't place implants. Like, how do I do this photo? This is just me holding the handpiece up in front of like the crappy, you know, Walmart fluorescent lights that were in this doctor's office. You know, that's how I did that. I don't have like some special background. I'm not putting the handpiece with like that sterile burr and implant down on like a piece of like white t-shirt. Like, you know what I mean? That's how you do that. You got to improvise these things and find a way. All right, so I will show you guys if you want to go, okay, man, like I don't want to do just the white t-shirt. I want to like up my game a little bit. All right, so here's what I do for like a one light setup. Right, so this is this Octabox, guys. This is ginormous. It's pretty big. It's actually not very heavy, and it's not that expensive for the strobe and the Octabox combined. I mean, it's like $300, like maybe. And I'm going to show you, you can do so many wicked photos with this thing. It's absolutely incredible. So these were some veneers that are very talented ceramist Olivier Trick did for me. This is, you know, on the single central. That's what, 1-1-2-1. Did I get that right for my European folks? So that's 8 and 9, right? So this Octabox was great for creating, again, a high key background, really showing that texture. This cast is sitting in front of that, and that light just washes over, you know, the facial surface of those and just reveals that texture, and it's absolutely stunning. So here's how this is. And again, guys, I took this photo. It took me like 30 seconds to do. Here's a setup in my operatory, and you can see on the table behind me, there's still cement and casts from like the patient that was in there prior to me. This is pre-COVID days. Oh my gosh. So I've got a remote trigger on top of my camera. If you see it, notice I don't have any flashes hooked up. And when I press the button, click, that flash pops. And I'm just going to show you, I mean, this is me trying to, you know, film this on my own, just zooming in, showing you what this looks like, just pretty much off camera. There we are, man. Great texture, required very little. Again, I had about 5-10 minutes to clean it before that next patient came in. I just popped that photo before that woman came in to get her veneers, cleaned up, done. And that's it, man. And that's how you get that photo. Again, high key background. This was a tooth that one of the oral surgeons extracted on like an 18-year-old kid. You know, the roots aren't completely formed, and I just put that on top of the Octabox. shot up, and it creates this beautiful silky white background. What I really love this for, this is, and now this is what I love the most is, again, you know, you guys remember that photo that my man Damie like took, right? Where it's like that drama. I love drama. I love the drama, right? I despise, actually loathe these images where people have softbox on a patient and they're smiling and it just looks sterile. It looks like there's just no life to the patient. It looks like they're sitting in a photo studio, right? This photo, it looks like this patient is sitting in front of like a natural light window. And again, take a look at the eyes, you guys. Remember what I said about going out and looking when you're out in nature, when you're out in the real world? Look at the photos that professionals are taking and look at the catch light in the eye. So take a look at this patient's eye, right where she's looking. You can see that circular octabox is sitting up and to the left of her, right? And just for my patients, especially being in Maine, we have the oldest demographic in the entire United States. This is the majority of my patients, females aged 50 to 65. That's like the majority of my patients. So you think when I do my marketing, I need to cater to people like this, right? So I want to make them look their absolute best. And this woman here, she's gorgeous, she's beautiful, she looks stunning. And this image shows her as she really is, right? And so here's the setup. This is, again, just in my office. And this octabox, like I said, it's so lightweight. And here's sort of a 360 view of this. So you see I've got that black background. That's the same thing behind me here. That was like 50 bucks on Amazon. It's pure white on the back side of it. So if you want to take, again, high key images, you know, instead of these kind of low key shots. And again, you can see that octabox is sitting kind of right near her. Pop, pop, pop. And again, that's on her way out the door before the next patient comes into the waiting room. Done. Easy. At patient, I send that image to all of my patients and they love it. They love it. And that is some of the best word of mouth I can recommend. So Aman Gearbach, again, sent me this. This is one of my favorite instruments. This is an instrument stand. It's absolutely stunning. The problem with photographing images like this sometimes, though, is, again, if you're using a traditional flash, like anybody who's taken photos of like articulators or metal crowns, those, there's a lot of glare that comes off it, right? And so with this octabox, it creates this nice subtle look, right? It's almost like a matte finish. And so again, this octabox is great for, again, the low key photos with a pure black background on the left, or you can do the high key photos on the right. And it kind of looks like something out of an Apple ad, right? So you can do both. It's super versatile. Okay, now the people are like, hey man, I want to step it up even a little bit more, man. I want to use, like, I got two of these things. I want to use two of them. So here's an image. You know, a lot of people ask me how I got this image, right? How do you do this with one octabox? I showed this presentation like a year ago. A bunch of people went out and bought the octabox and they're like, all right, I can't get like uniform lighting. Well, yeah, you need a second light source. So here's sort of the behind the scenes. This is my man Lucas. For anybody, Lucas is also a KOL for Aman Gearbach. So those of you that know Lucas know he's a super cool guy. We're like this. We're pretty tight. He's like my best friend. So this is at Lucas's lab. And again, these octaboxes just collapsed down. I threw them in the back of my car, drove down to Boston to see him. And so this was for a case that we're doing that's coming out in lab line next couple months, I think. So check that out. So I've got a smaller octabox sitting underneath, right? And you can see I just put the cast right on that thing, man. And you see the material sort of collapses a little bit. So what? Right now I've got this giant octabox sitting up top. And so that creates uniform lighting from both sides. So that's how I'm getting that. You can do the same thing with portraits. Again, I really don't like these images. I really don't like soft boxes for portraits. It just looks so, I don't know. I'm just not into it, man. I'm very opinionated. Like if you guys like soft boxes for your portraits, great. I don't like it, man. I won't use it. I won't. So this is how I do like a lot of my portraits. And this was actually taken by one of my students, very, very talented prosthodontist. Her name is Fotini Tulumi. She's out at UIC Chicago. I don't know if she's watching this, but Fotini, if you are watching this, thank you so much for this photo. And she took this. This is my other friend, Sherry. She took this picture of her. Again, had no experience doing photography. I showed her this setup right off camera. This is how this looks, right? So where are the lights? So take a look at the patient's eye, right? You can see that there's a softbox up and to the right of her, right? But there's also a octabox behind her, right? And again, you can see the outline of that octabox off on her left shoulder. So again, that's creating a white background. Both of these lights are going off at the same time. They're connected to that remote trigger that's on top of my camera. Again, super easy to do. All right, now selecting the right equipment. Everybody always asks me like what camera I use, right? Like as though the camera is like, like there's a lot of, okay, let me just say this. There's a lot of people that still think that it's the arrow, not the archer. Guys, like it is 100% the Archer. Like it helps to have decent equipment, but you don't need great equipment, right? So all of the equipment, most of these photos that I'm showing you, a lot of these photos, like the benchtop photography, the intraoral photos, like $1,000 you could get these photos like easy, right? So a camera, the Canon camera I use, it's not like a pro level camera. It's like prosumer grade. It's just above what you'd get at like an electronics store, right, with a kit lens and everything. It's like an okay camera. It's fine, right? The lens that I use, now the lens is the most important part. The glass is the key part. If you're going to spend money on anything, spend money on the glass. That's where you want to spend your money. And then again, the speed light is like 60, $70, and then that flash down is like $30. So for $1,000, man, you could have like some really, really excellent photos. So people ask me, like, why do you like the Canon camera that you use? And it doesn't matter if you use Nikon, it doesn't matter if you use Canon, although I do think Nikon is going out of business, and probably Canon will follow shortly after that if they don't get their act together. But I picked the camera that like my mentors used, and for many people, price ultimately determines which one they get. There's no right or wrong answer. You know what I mean? I don't think that one is necessarily better than the other. But in terms of like brands and in terms of like, that doesn't matter. But the sensor size, this is something that I've really become a recent convert of. So the old camera that I used to use was what we call a crop sensor. The new camera that I have, it's a 2012 model. Again, camera I'm using is almost a decade old, guys. So you don't need the latest and greatest, trust me. So it's a full frame camera, and this is giving sort of an indication. If you look at the screen, these two squares, these two rectangles are giving you an indication of like one has a larger sensor size than the other one, meaning it's capturing a lot more light. It's capturing, in my opinion, I call it a wussy wig. Like what you see is what you get, wussy wig, right? Yeah, so these two images were of some Vita denture teeth. Vita sent me these teeth to try out, and I used them. This was actually in that first photo that I showed of that woman, the denture that I showed. So same lens, same light setup, same photographer. It's just a different camera, right? One's crop sensor, one's full frame. So they're both at the same distance. They're on a tripod. Notice in the right image, look how rich that color is, right? It's just so, like the color of those teeth looks like what the color of those teeth actually looks like. The image on the left just looks washed out. It just looks drab and dead to me, right? But again, if you're photographing very small objects, the image on the right shows a lot more because that sensor size is larger. I can see a lot more in there. If I wanted to get that same amount of image in my crop sensor, I'd have to back up a lot, right? And there's a lot of reasons for this, which I can't really go over here. But like I said, whichever camera you pick, it really just comes down to just brand loyalty and whichever your mentors you used or your teachers used. And so now we get to the lenses. So the lenses is the fun part, right? Lenses, this is where I spend all my money, and this is probably why I have no money for anything else. I can't even eat. Be warned, photography is an expensive, it's a very expensive addiction, right? So Canon has something that we call red line. They call it here, I'll go back to this. It's a red line. So if you're out in public and you see people taking photographs and they've got that massive lens, right? Even some of the smaller lenses, and they got that red line on there, they spent some cheddar on that glass. That's an expensive piece of glass, man. But the question comes up is, does better glass matter? Like, does it really, really matter? Yes, it does, but I'm going to put an asterisk on there. Yes, it does matter, but in terms of what we're doing for dental photography, I'm not so sure. All right, so here, many of you guys have seen this online, on Instagram, on Facebook, or if you've attended my lectures, you've seen this. One of these photos, this is my wife's teeth, and she has like stunning teeth. Oh my gosh, these are really insane looking teeth. So one of these photos was taken with the red line Canon lens, which is a very expensive lens, and the other one was taken with Canon's what I call the gold line lens, which is like a couple $100. It's pretty difficult to tell which one is which, right? And when I've done this in previous webinars, and I put up a polling question, I'll have people vote on this, which one they think is which. Every single time, it's like 48%, 52%. It's like almost 50-50. People cannot tell the difference. And of the 50% of the people who get it right, I wonder how many of those would actually admit that they guessed, that they really didn't know. I mean, it's like flipping. You can't tell. So the top picture is the higher quality glass. The bottom picture is the lower quality glass. And again, it's the same photographer, same camera, same lighting setup, same settings, everything. Just that's it. So I guess you guys got to make the determination. If you're brand new to this or you're thinking about upgrading, just consider, is it worth twice the price to upgrade? Again, I'm not convinced that it is. What I really like about these lenses though is that the same lenses that I'm using for intraoral photos, I can take outside. And again, guys, lighting is everything. If it wasn't abundantly clear at this point that lighting is like the really the X factor in your photos. Take a look. I mean, these are just some images out at the beach, right? The image on the left is a picture out in Florence, Oregon, right? That's out on the west coast of the US, out near the Pacific Ocean. Picture on the right is at Kahakama in South Africa with my daughters, right? No, I don't have lighting setups here. It's just point and shoot with my camera and my 100mm lens. This is my niece. Again, this is South Africa. She was standing behind a very dark background, and I just popped this photo off, and you can see in her eyes, like, look where the catch light is. Those are natural. That's natural light filtering in from the side, right? Here's my daughter. This is at the beach, right? We were just on the beach, and she had gone for a swim, come back in. She was feeling kind of tired. I popped this photo. Again, you can get really, really great images with these lenses, and half of those images, no, actually, let me say all those images were taken with the lower end glass. So, go figure. This quote by Henry Cartier-Bresson is one of my all-time favorites. In photography, the smallest thing can be a great subject. I really, really like the super macro photography. And so, guys, this is what this thing looks like. Real time. It's like, this thing is like staring down the barrel of an Uzi. This thing is massive and it's heavy. And as I'm holding this, like I'm getting a kink in I'm getting like carpal tunnel in my wrist. Like, also with this, there's no way to focus. You can't focus. You can't like press the shutter halfway down and have it like autofocus. You know what I mean? You have to manually focus this. And when you're looking through it, it's like trying to focus with a sniper rifle. If you take a deep breath, or if you've had an extra cup of coffee that day, man, it is shaky. And so the recommendation is that you use focusing rails, and you can do this process called photo stacking, which is really, really cool. And to be honest with you, I don't photo stack really, because you know what I mean? I'm not that wild about the look of it. For certain things, yes, but in dental photography, there's a lot of things that I really like a little bit more of like fall off. I like a little bit more blurry in the background. I think it looks a little bit more artistic. There's some people that do some incredible photos with the photo stacking with this, with insect eyes and things like that, and it's mind-blowing to see this stuff. But here's an up-close photo of the tissue. Again, here's the pin on my articulator, right? It opens up an entirely different world that you never would have seen before. Again, here's the IMLT on my Artex, right? Keep in mind, guys, those are millimeter increments like being shown in between there, or half millimeter increments being shown there. This gives you some scale. I mean, this looks like a spaceship. It's absolutely insane, right? That right there is this little thing here. Again, those are like little, millimeter, 2mm, like little increments there. That's how small that is, but it looks like otherworldly. I mean, you can do some really, really insane things. So here's a wide angle shot. Aman Gierwak made me these amazing lenses. They did a collaboration with MPF Brush Company, and they presented me with these lenses in this absolutely beautiful like leather case. And I'm vegan, and I even like this leather case. It's bananas, right? And it was totally custom, only 30 made. And thank you, Aman Gierwak. So they made this for me, and it just begged to be photographed. So here's like a wide angle, just to give you some perspective of what this looks like. And then up close, here are the actual brushes, right? And anybody that's ever seen the movie Alien knows, right? This looks like something from Giger, right? Like Giger did like all these beautiful like artwork for the xenomorphs in that movie. And this just reminds me of something from that movie. Just again, the drama, the shadow. This looks absolutely incredible. The other end of that brush, right? There's the actual bristles. Dude, I think I can see dust on those bristles, right? I think I can see like some microbes on there. It is absolutely insane. You guys remember, carpule art was like a thing for like a hot minute on Instagram, right? This was my like one attempt at carpule art, whatever. And again, taking like a wide shot bag. This is this product by Smileline, right? This is their implant drivers. You get up close, gorgeous images with this thing, right? You can take some really, really intense photos with this stuff. The problem is, okay, now here's the problem. I said I was going to show you guys inexpensive products, right? Because I want you guys to get out there and start using this stuff. This is not a cheap lens. It's not inexpensive. This is about $900 used. $9 used. So just make that determination if it's something that you really want to do, because it's kind of a one-trick pony. There's only a few things you can do with it. But I would recommend get a wide-angle lens. You can get a cheap wide-angle lens, man, and you can get some really nice photos. So this picture of this Facebook, I'm about half inch away. Half inch, okay, we got European folks watching this, right? What's a half inch? Damn it. It's like 3 centimeters, maybe 1.5 centimeters, something like that. I'm not that far away. I'm pretty darn close, right? And again, here's some shade tabs, like all laid out. If I wanted to take this picture with my 100mm macro lens, I'd have to be standing probably 4 meters away to take this photo to get it all in frame, right? So you can get one of these lenses again, a couple $100 on Amazon or eBay, something like that. They're really inexpensive. Oh, and somebody asked me too, hey, I noticed you buy a lot of your products on eBay secondhand. You're absolutely right, I do. Now keep in mind, guys, like people who like are spending 2 grand on a macro lens like that probably aren't letting it roll around in their backpack with the lens cap off. They take good care of this. They're rubbing it with a diaper on weekends, right? They're taking good care of this stuff. I'd say 99% of all photo equipment that I have, I got used. I got secondhand, and I've had it for 7, 8 years without any issues whatsoever. So okay, wide versus macro again. Just create some context, right? If you're a laboratory, if you're sort of like, again, provide that context. Show me the final impression of the denture, and then show me the alien landscape up close, right? Like, give me something to like really think about. Again, here was like a photo shoot I did for VPI. It's again this other company I speak for, right? So there's like a picture of me with like a standard portrait lens. There's like the macro photos intraorally, and then a wide lens, right? And all of these photos were done like without really much effort at all, right? Without really much cost. And now this comes down to like choosing your subject. All right, so now you got to figure out like what do you actually want to photograph, okay? And I tell people, and I get that one of the most common things I hear from dental technicians all the time is, man, I can't get the final photos from my doc, and there's nothing, interesting in the lab to photograph. Bro, there's a lot of interesting stuff to photograph, and I think most of the interesting stuff is sitting right underneath your nose, right? Some wax up instruments, like the scale that you're gonna measure it on, that denture that you did the locators for, right? The denture that you had to reline, tons of stuff. The hydrofluoric acid that you're using to etch those lithium disilicate crowns, man. There is a lot of stuff. Show me some, again, give me some perspective. Show your setup, right? Show me what you're doing. Show me that in between. So again, if you were a laboratory technician, you want to get my business, you've got to show me the passion, man. You've got to show me that passion, that you are super psyched about this and that you're taking the same types of photos that I am. I want to know that you like teeth more than me, right? Again, just a simple shade guide, repeating patterns in a denture tray. Anything can become art. You just have to look for it. Show me the texture. Again, this is that veneer case that I showed you guys before. Make it dramatic. I like the drama. Show me something that nobody else is showing me before, right? And now Ansel Adams had this quote. I love this quote. Everybody, of course, knows who Ansel Adams is, right? There's nothing worse than a sharp image of a fuzzy concept. Just try to have in mind like what you're going to photograph. Now, a lot of times, I will admit a lot of my best photos came when I wasn't even thinking about it, and almost as like a happy accident. But it helps if you have sort of like a game plan, right? So in terms of composition, now again, I told you guys that portrait photos are really difficult to take, and this is the way that I started out taking portrait photos. This image that you see of this woman on the left, you can notice she's wearing camouflage gear. This is when I was in the military. This was going to be one of my board patients, and this was my pre-op, portrait photo. Oh, horrible. But why did I take my photos like that? Because every single resident that came before me took pictures just like that, right? Beware of dogma, right? Challenge what is currently going on. You have to do something different, right? I took my pictures like that because I didn't know any better. It was my first year in residency, and that's the way everybody was taking their photos, right? And it looks like a mugshot. There's no dignity to that photo. Like, sorry, Tiger, he's actually on the up and up. Okay, so I should probably change that photo. But again, add a human element, right? I want the patients to look at me and be looking through the lens. I don't want them to be on display, right? I want that picture to tell a story about my patients, right? So this is a photo, again, same camera, same lens, same flash, everything. Just, I understand that, there's a different way to take these photos of people. And it doesn't just apply to people, right? So this is something that you guys can work on. Maybe we have to social distance. So you're like, okay, I can't practice my portrait photos. Man, get any inanimate object that's at your lab or at your office, your dental office in the operatory, and just start photographing it, man. So here's my denture. And again, I took this was for my actual board case that I passed my Part 4 board case on. And this is how I took my photos. And the reason I took my pictures like that, that's how everybody took their board pictures, right? And it just looks terrible. It looks absolutely awful. You can add a little swagger and a little mojo to your photographs, right? You can do things. And again, if your lighting isn't great, go black and white, man. Black and white will hide a lot of stuff, trust me. All right, so to kind of sum up that part, money is not your limiting resource unless you want to buy that giant lens, but imagination is really what's going to set you apart. And so another hot tip that I always have for people, and again, this is I don't mean to beat on the technicians that are watching, But the thing I hear all the time is like, I don't have any final photos. Man, you got to go to the dentist office, call them up and start taking those photos, because I guarantee you're taking better photos than most of your dentists are taking, right? And if you're a clinician, go to your lab. Like, granted, sometimes I work with labs like across the world and I can't do that. But if you are nearby, man, go to their lab and start taking photos. Like, you got to go to the lines then, right? Get pictures of this stuff while your ceramist, while your technician is working on it. For the technicians, go to the office while they're doing surgery and get the photo of that tooth coming out. Again, I never would have got these photos. I have to go to my periodontist office to get these photos. Like, I wouldn't get these in my office. So if I don't have these photos, you know what I mean? Again, I feel like I'm missing part of the story. It's like coming into like, like watching like any kind of like epic series like Star Wars, but you've left out like the middle three movies or something. You've just seen like the beginning and the end, and you kind of like confused by how did you get there, right? So again, this was a xenograft, right? This is just a bone graft that I took at the periodontist office. And here's some of these photos. Remember I said like my photos don't even look like that? Like, there's been a little modification, a little tweaking. Probably took me 10 shots to get that shot just the way that I wanted it. And again, it's just the difference, these subtle differences. It's just lighting and composition. Notice again, look in the little glass vial there. You can see the outline of that flash donut, and actually both of these other pictures, right? So it took me a little angle correction so I wouldn't see that. And again, take a look in the back. In both of these photos, you can see the fluorescent lighting on the ceiling as I'm just holding this up. And you can notice the water, that liquid, that heme down in the front of that vial, how it's kind of like tilting up. That's because I'm tilting this backwards, right? So there's a lot going on in this, a lot you can tell about these photos. So again, not every one of my photos, and don't get discouraged if your first few photos don't look great, right? Like, you got to take a lot of shots. It's just pixels. It's not like the days of film where you had to, pop off 30 shots to figure out that they all look terrible, right? All right, so marketing yourself and your product. All right, so now we kind of come to the end. So like, great, you've got all of your photos. Now what do you do with these things? So this is my strong recommendation. This is something I did in my office right from the beginning, and this has yielded such phenomenal results because your patients are potentially the biggest source of referrals that you're going to have. Every time one of my patients comes in, who are usually women, oftentimes they're bringing their male husbands, sometimes female partners. Hey, it's 2020, right? So they're sitting there, and their partner, their spouse, their boyfriend, their girlfriend, brother, sister, whatever it is, they're sitting on the couch, and while they're getting their bleaching, while they're getting their crown prep, they're flipping through this book. I've made a lookbook, right? And it's this massive book. And this is what this looks like, right? It's about this big. I don't know how many centimeters, inches this is, but it's like 13 inches. But you see, there's like all these photos in here, right? And they're beautifully shot, and they're uniform. And, I've got images in here that are sort of like artistic, and some that show before and afters, right? And I had this made with Apple, and it's got my website on the back, right? And I think this cost me maybe like 50 or 60 bucks like a few years ago. You can make much smaller ones, soft cover ones that you can give out to your clients. So my recommendation, right, and this is for dentists, this is for technicians watching this, you get one of the smaller books made up. It's about that big, it's soft color. You make it 20, 25 pages, right? It's gonna cost you like 25 bucks a book. Maybe that's like 20 euro a book, right? So say you make 20 of those, and you take it to the top 20 people that you wanna get referrals from, or you wanna like encourage to start using you as a laboratory, deliver it in person. You have your referral forms in there. And again, if you're writing papers or you're teaching, you're giving CE, give that individual, give them something for free. Don't just go there cold and just have an ask. Those are people, we call them ask holes, right? You're just asking me for something without giving me anything. There's no relationship being built there, right? So when I go to the general dentist's office, when I go to the other specialist office in town, and I give them my book in person, with my business cards, a few publications, meeting them in person, I say, hey, why don't I give you and your staff some free CE? I'm going to order lunch for you guys. I'm going to give you a 1 hour, a 45-minute presentation. I'm going to tell you about XYZ, some of the things I do. You get free CE. I've cleared it with like the Maine Dental Association, so everybody gets like 80 ADA, CERP, like continuing education credits. It's great. People love it. And then this is what you do, and you do that a few times, and the ROI, the return on investment, is massive. It's better than any Google AdWords, better than anything else I've ever done. So this is sort of, again, a shot of what some of these images look like on the inside. And I will tell you, take a look at these images down at the bottom. Take a look at these ones right here. Don't show photos like that to your patients. If you're a ceramist, yeah, show that to your docs. If you're a doc showing that to another doc, sure, show that. Don't show that to your patient, man. They get freaked out. They don't like it. Trust me, they're not gonna like it. Don't do it. Don't show photos like that. All right. And your photographs, and this quote by Amit Kalantri, a photograph shouldn't be just a picture, it should be a philosophy. And again, find your own style. Most of my images, like when people steal them, people will steal them. So like watermark them, do whatever. They will post them elsewhere. Have your own style, and people will be able to recognize your images right away. All right. So make it a philosophy. So a question I get asked all the time, as we're nearing the end of this, I get some people that are they'll just tell me straight out, they're like, Miles, like, I'm gonna be honest, man, like, there's no way I'm gonna buy all this stuff. The time, the money, the learning curve, it's just too much. I'm just not into it. Can't I just use my cell phone? Can't I just use my smartphone? Yes, you can. And actually, the evolution of our smartphones, right, are so good now. You can take really, really high quality images with your smartphone. So this image here that you see this cutout of, this was at the Lunar Sea in Austria. This is a glacial lake. And this is just taken with my iPhone on the panoramic mode. I just hit click and just scrolled. And again, same thing with dentistry. If you have a beautiful subject to photograph, admittedly, this would have been very difficult to take a bad photo of this, right? Like it'd be really hard to take a bad photograph of this landscape. But this was, and it's funny, I posted this online and I had a few photographers write me that are actually getting paid to do like wedding photos and portraits. And they're like, oh my gosh, what lens did you use? And I'm like, my iPhone like 9, like whatever it was. And they were like, oh, like you can get awesome photos with your cell phone. Okay. You can get really, really great photos. So some of the issues with cell phones, though, anybody who's tried to do this, or any of the, technicians who have gotten photographs from their docs, sending them shape photos, know intraoral photos with up close photos have a proximity issue. Everybody thinks it's the lens. They're like, oh, it's a wide angle lens, so you get this barreling effect distortion. Not true. 100% not true. It's because you're too darn close, right? If I stand farther away and take that same photo, it looks normal. It has nothing to do with the curvature of that wide angle lens. It's only due to the proximity. All right. So what happens is you move farther away, right? There's less and less light. And so you have problems lighting the intraoral environment. And Lester Dine in 1952 recognized this, which is why he developed a ring flash that would go on the end of your lens for doing like intraoral photography, right? So cell phones, there's a very small learning curve. They're inexpensive. Everybody's already got one. The device that I use, and these are called eels. So my wife and I wrote a paper about a year ago, and again, I'll give the links to that at the end. Several companies have answered that call, right? Because how do you illuminate the intraoral environment? Well, you need these things called eels, which stands for external artificial light source. So these external artificial light sources basically attach to your cell phone, and they provide a lot of light. So these photos that I'm going to show you now, and again, these were all taken by my wife, okay? So again, I'm using my DSLR in one room. She's seeing patients in the other room that are like waiting to like, come on to see me, that are getting consults. Sometimes I'm away lecturing oftentimes, so she's still back at the office. Somebody might come in for an emergency. So these are all photographs taken by my wife. This is my poor daughter who's got, some peg laterals. She's got some things. She needs some ortho done. So my wife took these photos at our dinner table, before dinner, of course, and then sent that off to the orthodontist. And the orthodontist is like, oh my gosh, these are better than the photos that we're taking. My wife's like, yeah, it's just right out of the box of this product, right? This was an image that my wife took again of this guy that came in and he wanted a veneer consultation. I wasn't in that day. So my wife just, popped a couple photos, sent it to me like real time on my phone and said, hey, what do you think we should do? Do you want to see this guy back for, diagnostic impressions? You want it to start prep? Like, what do we need to do? So I was able to see that very, very well. Again, I had gone off to get like sandwiches or something, and we had a new patient in that was complaining of some pain. My wife pulls back the lip, takes this photo, and says, hey, here's like the pan of this woman. What do you think? And I said, yeah, send her to the periodontist. Like, I don't need to see her today. She needs to go see a periodontist or an oral surgeon first. Like, this is a bigger issue, right? There's like obvious pathology going on here. It's interesting, like eyeball photography has become like a big thing now, right? So like, I don't know, you can take really cool eyeball photos. Now take a look at the eyeball, guys, right? Look at the iris and the pupil there. Look where that flashes. So that's the diffused area of this, MDP being shown in the eyeball. Again, you can take really good product shots. Again, this is that denture I always like to show. And I just set that on top of my iPad. That's on my iPad, giving me a nice subtle reflection. And again, I made one of them black and white to add a little class or pizzazz to that. But you can take really good product shots of the work that you're doing in your laboratory too, and post that online. Like most people wouldn't know that was taken with a cell phone. And in terms of communicating with a lab, there's a lot of times where I don't want to get this thing out, like the batteries are dead or I left the card at home or something, right? And so now I just get out the MDP and I take a couple shots, shoot it to Lucas, and he makes a phenomenal crown, right? And it, or veneer, whatever it is. And now a lot of people want to know, okay, does it have the crossed polarized filter? Yes, 100%. And it's just magnetic. It just pops on there. And so these are the kinds of images that you can get. Again, if you didn't want to like buy polarize or one of these, you know, a little bit more expensive polarizing filters for your DSLR, this can do that too. And again, in the time of coronavirus, this device has become really, really critical because we want to keep people out of the ER, right? So this patient comes in and I go in and take this photograph, right? And I got to discuss with my buddies, does this guy need a root canal? You know, or if my assistant's in there, my wife, you know, taking these photographs, and I can be in the other room. You don't need to expose multiple people to patients, you know, if you want to try to keep, you know, flatten the curve out a little bit. And I can view this real time and make a decision about whether or not that patient needs to be seen by me. This was another patient that came in a few weeks ago. She came in, I took this photograph. You know, there's some recurrent decay, this fractured tooth. We took a, you know, a PA of the tooth, periapical radial, you know, there's all kinds of things going on here, and we were able to make an easy decision about this. This patient normally would have gone to the emergency room, probably waited 5 hours, spent $3,000 or $4,000, and been given some Percocet or Tylenol or something like that. So you guys, I just want to, again, thank everybody. We're at the end here. You've been very, very patient. Thank you for sticking around and listening to me go on and on and on. Again, this is an article that my wife and I wrote for Inside Dental Technology. It's also an Inside Dentistry. If you guys have a subscription to those, it's available there. If not, again, I'm going to show my email address and ways to contact me. I'll send you this paper if you're interested in reading it, learning more. This was another article that I wrote for Inside Dental Technology back in 2018. And this is one that I did for Focus, again, back in 2018, again, more on dental photography for laboratory technician. And even though it says for the laboratory technician, it's really for everybody. And I want to leave you guys with a few thoughts. This quote by Yusuf Karsh: "The heart and mind are the true lens of the camera." And again, doesn't cost a lot of, it's not money and time are not your limiting factors here, guys. It's just really like what's here and like what's up here, and that will really allow it to show. I'd love to hear from you. This is my personal email address at the top. That's my Instagram handle. Please follow me. I'd love to hear from you. Depthofielddental.com, that's my photography website. Nuance Dental, that's my personal website for our dental office. Thank you, Aman Gierbach. Thank you, Richard Jentz, for hosting, and thank you everybody for attending. Yeah, I'd love to.